Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us again. Today I have Whitney Reese on, and what I really am curious to talk about with Whitney, well, a number of different things, but how she has made kind of a career out of succeeding. And you'll understand what I mean in a minute, and I purposely am trying to induce her with some thoughts. But she is obviously extremely highly educated. She's a great coach. She's been to the highest level of the CrossFit Games. And there's a lot of athletic background even prior to that. And I'd love to suss a lot of that out, because what I'm mostly curious about is how you take that and implement it into a coaching program. So as people have heard before, I love to ask the question, how do you really like helping your clients and athletes, Whitney?
That's a lot of questions wrapped into one.
Yes,
Wow.
it is.
Which one do you want to start with?
I want to start with how you help your clients and athletes, because I think that's a great segue into the rest.
Okay. So how I help my clients and athletes is a bit multifactorial. So one area that I like to focus on is developing a support system. The reason that I focus on that is there is a development process and there's a lifespan within the athlete cycle itself. And depending on where you are in that cycle, support looks different when you're beginning that journey and you may or may not know what you're getting into, versus when you're towards the end of that journey and starting to face the reality of what is my next step if it's not competing. Both of those are very difficult points within the athlete spectrum for their lifespan. So I like focusing on what support looks like. And for every single person, that support system is drastically different. It does not mean being a cheerleader. It takes getting to know how people are hardwired. There are some people that need the occasional, like, you're doing great, it's not meant to feel good, just keep doing. And there's some people that need the very linear, honest feedback that's not emotional, but is honest, that's, yeah, that one wasn't great. So everyone is different in what type of support they need. So I like finding that out about each individual and then building that actually into their plan. Is, are we at a point within a season, if they are a seasonal athlete, that is meant to be a very challenging time? Because if it is, then communication probably is less around numbers and more around the intent, and that, yes, that was supposed to be unsustainable. Or, yes, you should not walk away feeling like you nailed that. Flip side of the season, as you go into competing, the support is probably going to look different and be more along the lines of the intent is, I want you to walk in, feel like you nailed that, and feel snappy, and then go enjoy the rest of your day. So for each individual that I work with, I try to get down into what is that basic communication and what does that support look like.
Interesting. How, without going so deep down the rabbit hole that we couldn't come out, how would you broadly say that you go about figuring out whether it's communication with a specific client or athlete, or understanding them well enough to know if they need the attaboy or if they need the linear, that was just not good today? How do you kind of try to understand that?
That's a good one. I do use one self quiz that is more of a, are you balanced across domains of your life? That looks at mindfulness, physical energy, spiritual energy, and meditation. It's something that I've had experience with in residency and fellowship training. That just, you rank yourself in 4 domains, and where your score is the lowest, you know that that is a domain that is indicating you're probably going to crash because you, the human, are lacking balance. So as far as objective things, I do like using that quiz kind of once a month to just see where are we, and then having a conversation around that, because not all people see spirituality as the same thing. Not all people see meditation as the same thing. So once I have that score, we just talk about what does that mean, and using an open-ended question of, would you like to talk about that? Or is that something you would like to investigate together? It gives people the permission to say, you don't have to go down that journey if you don't want to. And if you do, there's some options that we could talk about.
Interesting. If you were to put a percentage on the number of people that want to investigate those questions a little bit further, what would you say the number is?
Say it depends on their age.
Oh, interesting. Dig into that. I'm super curious about that.
No, it's a noticing. I have noticed that further into the getting into the 4th and 5th and 6th decade of life, so past about the age of 35, is the idea of leaving a legacy and actually longevity and being open to uncomfortable conversations is actually something that seems to be pursued a little bit more.
Would you say that has shifted at all in the last 5 or 10 years, or would you say it's consistent?
I really couldn't say. And the reason I couldn't say is the metric that I use wasn't around 10 years ago.
Interesting.
So,
I'd be really interested. Yeah. I'd be really interested in, I want to talk to you about it for the next 5 years, but it seems like younger people are asking bigger questions earlier. Now, it doesn't mean that they understand it, right? It doesn't mean that they really know why they're asking it, but it would seem that that's happening. Would you say the same thing or not?
I would, because I had an hour sit down with a doctorate student this morning actually about that. And the questions she was asking were not entry-level questions. The things she was asking were more centered around motivational interviewing and an awareness of her response to a group environment interaction that didn't go well, and how to mitigate that for group work, knowing that she hasn't even actually started her professional career.
Wow.
And in reality, those thoughts in a mid-20-year-old are not, well, 10 years ago when I started teaching in clinical settings, were not normal questions for 25-year-olds to ask. In their 30s and mid-30s, yes, that awareness of burnout and that communication prevents burnout and that alignment is important was not something that was a discussion point before finishing a doctorate.
Interesting. Oh man, we could go. I'm going to take a mental note that we're going to have to dig into that topic in a much bigger way on another call. I want to shift gears a little bit. So you have a pretty rich athletic history and you have a pretty rich educational history, just so that people have some perspective on where you're coming from. Can you just help us understand where you're coming, where you've been educationally and athletically?
Yeah, they're a bit tied together. So athletically, I was a multiple sport athlete until a multiple ligament knee injury when I was 15. Before that time, despite playing basketball, track, tennis, karate, gymnastics, soccer, there's probably something else I'm forgetting.
I love how you said multiple sport as if it was two, and then you just start naming everything that you were doing. That's pretty good. All right, sorry, keep going.
Lots of sports. I was going through the Olympic development ranks in Central Texas for soccer before that knee injury. And then with that injury, facing rehabilitation as a 15-year-old, had an awareness of, I might have to have a plan B, that my long-term goal of playing soccer at a very high level, what am I going to do if I can't go back to that? And being the child of a teacher, my parents definitely encouraged me to enjoy the learning and education process. And so that's always been a high priority for me, which as an adult, I didn't realize how important it was to me until decades later, putting two and two together, that I actually was very delayed in reading. And so for my first, until second grade, I was in an individual education plan for reading until a teacher figured out I had a photographic memory. And then once I learned what that meant, was in gifted and talented classes. I just didn't know what to do in a structured environment until someone taught me what to do with it. And then when I returned to playing soccer after rehab, I had to face the reality of, I'm only ready to pick 3 sports. And that was shocking to me at that age, to say, okay, I can only do basketball, and then I can only do soccer, and when soccer ends, I can only do track. And I did that for a year, and then academically had to make a decision between staying in college classes as a junior and senior in high school, or doing 3 sports. And I have to thank my parents for them just letting me choose what I wanted to do. So I chose soccer, requalified for the Olympic development program, and did high school full-time and did college classes. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was a second semester sophomore. Oh, as far as hours. Yeah, it was painful.
That's unbelievable. I was probably, by the time I graduated high school, I was probably a second semester sophomore in high school. So I think that you probably have me pretty well beat on that one.
Yeah, I did not know that was not normal when I was in high school, because all of my friends were either student athletes or high performing academic students. And so I went to Incarnate Word in San Antonio on an academic and athletic scholarship, which I'm very thankful for to this day, and continued to play for the Olympic development program until I was in the U23s and had another knee surgery to remove all the hardware from my first surgery. And then at that point, coming up to graduation, decided to apply for my doctorate for physical therapy. And I chose the university actually based on the soccer field.
Of course you did.
I totally did. I was like, it's gorgeous. It's Colorado. They have a beautiful campus. They have a good soccer team. It's a 20-minute drive from the semi-pro team. I was like, that's it. That's where I want to be.
That is so funny. When I was about to go to college, I had offers from Penn, and that would have put me in Wharton Business School. And I just didn't really understand what that meant, right? And so, don't get me wrong, I loved going to Penn State, but to this day, I'm just like, you idiot. You had basically a direct shot right into Wharton Business School, and you just rolled past it. But we make decisions based on small things, I think, small emotional hooks that dig their way into our soul. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, they really do. And it was ironic timing that the PT school I chose to go to, for the period of time I was there, a number of, you could say, gurus in the research world for evidence-based practice, for matching what a physical exam does and does not tell you with exercise and hands-on interventions, happened to all be faculty at that school at that point in time. And so I was lucky to have that experience while going through my doctorate. And it fell in my lap that when I moved back to Texas after finishing my doctorate, that one of their fellow researchers had just opened a clinic in the small town in Texas I grew up in and was starting a residency and fellowship program. And so I said, hey, I'm up for the pain. I will come learn whatever you want me to learn clinically. I will do whatever you tell me to do for the next however long, because I want to learn to think like that. So I continued down that journey and did an orthopedic residency and a fellowship. And right at the end of my fellowship, qualified for the CrossFit Games.
So I have to ask a question on that. So the academic inside of you, you've had 2 knee surgeries. So what was the emotion? Oh, sorry, 3 knee surgeries. What was the emotional connection that got you to want to go through that?
The number of knee surgeries?
No. To go through CrossFit, like to compete at that level. What is it that connected you to wanting to go through that level of pain?
I didn't even start with that as an awareness. So when I started CrossFit, it was back when it first started. And it was right after I'd had my 3rd knee surgery. So that surgery, of all tears, I'm like, that was the stupid adult moment. Is I was playing in a co-ed soccer league and got tackled by a guy that was like 250.
Oh.
And broke my clavicle, dislocated my shoulder, tore my ACL. And I was like, rec league as an adult is how
I mean, the way that you just described that sounds like he didn't just tackle you. It sounds like he hit you with the bat. I mean,
I'm not really sure how I landed. I know there was some accordion involved. Yeah, I got to sit in the ER for 13 hours. That was fun. But yeah, so after that surgery, I was in clinic treating every day. And my sister, who is a Pilates instructor, had a studio next to a strength and conditioning gym. And that strength and conditioning coach added CrossFit as a group option to his studio. And so she said, hey, he's next door to the Pilates studio. You can come work with a strength coach that'll respect your knee. And if you want to do some Pilates after, you can hit up the studio. And then there was a Bikram studio, like maybe a block down the street. So I would just one after the other. Because that's what I was used to for years of college, that I would get up at 4:30 and train. And then after training, I would go do hot yoga. And then I would take a nap for 2 hours. And then I would go to class. And so I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. So I started doing that because I was going for a FIFA referee license. And after about a year, that's when the first CrossFit Games came out, and I was just starting my fellowship. And I was like, I don't think it's a good idea to put this on hold and go do this. That just seems not smart. And then one of the girls I was training with did do that. And when she came back, I was like, I'm not competitive with you, but I'm totally competitive.
Oh yeah, I know you well enough to know that was not not the finest moment, I'm sure.
No, not the most mature emotional moment. So after that, I was like, we're gonna do this. And so I told the coach, I was like, all right, this is my intention, we're gonna do it. And what happened is I did the men's weight for every single thing we did for a year.
And then you were ready, just like that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I still remember seeing you come out of the gates. Was it 2011 with the track power snatch bar muscle up workout? Was that the year that you did that? Do you remember that?
I don't think it was that year. You might be thinking
Okay.
of the year that it was the deadlift sprint double under. The cameraman was not prepared for someone to actually sprint.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so catch us back up. That's about 10 years ago right now.
Yeah,
So,
that's 2010, and then since then, qualified for regionals in 11, 12, 13, 14, while coaching and running a full clinical practice. And at the time, I was leading an orthopedic residency and a concussion management program.
and that's why I led off the conversation the way that I did about success. So,
Not
so
sustainable.
do me, that's what I was kind of going to get at is, so connect that to how you now help your clients. So what have you learned, and we could go down so many rabbit holes here too, but what have you learned that's now in place with your clients and athletes that you want to make sure that they become aware of?
So a part of it is digging down into the why do you do the things that you do. You know, it's been a decade, actually longer than that, of me digging into what is that thing that results in me going back as an individual, and it's on a 2-year clock of going and doing some type of crazy academic thing. So just that awareness for me is that's never going to go away. So as an individual, what are the things that actually are your non-negotiables that aren't really your essence, but are you, that are not going to change? Lack of awareness around that can create a lot of conflict. And there's nothing more painful than being in the middle of a conflict of your own priorities.
Oh, well said. Please expand on that.
Yeah, I've lived that. For me, it's an awareness that my priorities are education, health, and family. And it took years of journaling and thinking through and thinking maybe one thing isn't a priority, and then it kind of falls off to the wayside and realizing, well, that wasn't actually why I was doing that. But when you get into those conflicting priorities, it feels like you're being ripped in half, where you literally have no right answer. They both feel wrong. That was something I had to face between a professional career and training and competing, is they did not align. There was no way to get in CrossFit where I wanted to get if I was not willing to give up a 40-hour clinic schedule. It was not possible. So the result of that was forcing it into my schedule and doing well at regionals, but in all honesty, never doing as well as I should have, because the things that I was willing to compromise for that priority was sleep.
Do you feel like, well, I guess let me ask this first. Did you realize this after your last regional, or did you realize it during maybe one of your last 2 regionals?
Definitely during my last 2 regionals.
Okay.
Yeah, the 2013, so to backtrack, 2012 probably was the year that I felt the most prepared. But when I went, by the time I got to regionals, I had bronchitis.
Oh.
So that should be like yeah, I was surviving that. And I vividly remember the last workout coughing up blood in the warm-up area.
That'll probably give some perspective, I suspect.
Yeah. So I remember that, and had family backstage, and Jamie looked at me and was like, there is absolutely zero reason for you to go out for this final workout. And I was like, I'm doing it because that is who I am. I don't have it in me not to. So yeah, there were lots of conversations after that.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine. I mean, number one, I would have put it at 100% probability that you walked out onto the floor for that last workout.
Totally did it. Totally did it. And almost finished it. Got the furthest in my heat, which ended up being probably 4th or 5th overall.
So
And I was
2012, was that the hundreds at the end, or no way?
No, that was the deadlift, muscle up, toe to bar, wall ball, farmer's carry, burpee, box jump over, farmer's carry, muscle up.
Yep, that one just about ended my life, and I just
It did.
Yeah.
It did almost end mine with bronchitis.
I can't even imagine. I honestly can't even imagine what that must have felt like in the moment.
Yeah, I can laugh about it now. When I watch the videos, I have to put them on mute because I can hear Jamie in the background, like, why are you stopping? And in my head, it's like, because I was coughing up blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, it took me 6 months for my lungs to recover.
Wow.
And had some very honest conversations with James around that, and went actually team in 2013 to try to let my body recover. And after 2013, didn't really feel back to 100% yet, but also knew, as far as my age, that I probably only had 1 year left to really give it a shot. And so, in all honesty, forced the heck out of that year. And by the time I got to regionals, I had pushed into such a lack of sleep to literally do the work, that I had full-on nerve pain in one arm and couldn't actually feel the bar during half of the workouts.
Man.
And after that, I was like, yeah, I've got to shut it down and go quiet for a while. Had a lot of honest conversations with Mike at that time of, what do you lose if you choose not to compete for 1 year? And that was a big awareness moment, as far as facing my own perception of, my family didn't care. Half of them didn't know what on earth I was doing, so I wasn't doing it for them. Jamie definitely already thought I was crazy. It didn't change who I was as a physical therapist. It didn't change what my patients thought of me. The only person that actually cared about it was me. And the reality of, I lose absolutely nothing by choosing not to do the Open this year was a huge awareness. And then since then, continuing to have that awareness of, who am I doing this for? Am I doing it for someone else, or am I doing it for myself? And the more I've focused on doing it for myself, even if the answer is, I don't know, I just want to do that just because it seems kind of fun and I think I want to try it. And if I can't do it, oh well, it's a journey to try to get there. Is it the more that I have actually focused on that, things are much less stressful and way more fun. And the reality that I can still squat now what I used to squat then, which is just a strange thing in my head, despite knowing everything I know of, yeah, I can sleep 9 hours and I can get up and walk around the garden and I can go squat the exact same weight at almost 40 that I was doing competing, killing myself to get things done. And that more does not mean better quality.
It's interesting. I suspect that you're the same way. A lot of people just think that I sleep 5 hours a night because I do a lot of things, but the things that I don't do are the things that have no meaning to me. so I just don't waste my time. And I see how I even speak about it, right? I have so little respect for the things I don't want to do that I almost don't give them the time of day. But I suspect you're the same way now, where you're spending your time doing the things that really mean something at a deeper level to you. And that still allows you to live the type of life you want and sleep however long you want, and enjoy the bigger picture. Gosh, I bet that's beneficial perspective for your clients to be able to tap into, because we see a lot of people, two things really come to mind. We see a lot of people who are conflicted when they come in, and they don't necessarily recognize that up front. And it takes a lot of conversation to help them understand maybe where their highest priorities are. And the second thing is, we see a lot of people who frankly need the year off. And they're pushing so hard because they know that the time window is not perpetual, but it takes a long time to truly recover if you've taken yourself off the edge. And that is profound insight. Now, I want to ask one question, but we got to answer it quickly. And then a couple of weeks from now, we'll do another conversation, but we're running out of time. So we're going to leave people on a cliffhanger.
Okay.
What are you the most interested in right now to learn, investigate, and dig into in the world of fitness?
Oh, that's a good one. Right now, my nerd out moment, I guess you could call it, is the implications of pain science on exercise prescription.
I don't want to leave it there, but we got to leave it there for right now. Whitney, do me a favor. Let's jump back on in a couple of weeks and investigate that a little bit, because I bet there's some seriously interesting stuff in there. But I appreciate it very, very much for you coming on, and thanks for digging into some of those challenging things. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this call.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Cool.